Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for day 3 of Reimagining Religious Freedom. This virtual conference has been hosted in partnership with the Vanderbilt Divinity School's Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative that's under the leadership of their postdoctoral fellow and associate director, Dr. Teresa Smallwood. And so we're thankful for Vanderbilt Divinity School making this investment in hosting this conference. Before we get our morning started, I just want to thank all of you that have joined us over the last 2 days, and even those of you that are joining us for the first time. I want to center our morning by remembering that it is Native American Heritage Month, and also acknowledging that I sit on Anacostan lands and remembering that I am a visitor here. At the same time, I want to remember the enslaved Africans and my ancestors who suffered and tirelessly fought to exercise their rights to be, to exist, to live, and to thrive in a society that did not recognize the wholeness and the giftedness of their being. We owe all of them a debt of gratitude. And so again, I say thank you and welcome. This virtual conference, as I mentioned, Reimagining Religious Freedom, is hosted in partnership with Vanderbilt Divinity School, but we have many other partners to join us in this work. We were joined by the Center for Faith, Justice, and Reconciliation in Richmond, Virginia, the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Theological Seminary, the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty, KARAMAH, Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights, and the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. Thank you to all of our partners for being a part of this event and making it possible for us to have these critical conversations. And we're also grateful for the generous support of the Henry Luce Foundation. So with that in mind, I just want to give an overview of what we've done in the last 2 days. Over the last 2 days, we discussed our role in reimagining religious freedom by having difficult conversations about Christian nationalism and the role that some religious communities have contributed to fueling the flames of hatred by using religion to discriminate against people of color and religious minority communities. In our panel, Reframing Christian Nationalism, Reframing Religious Freedom, Confronting Christian Nationalism, we raised the question, whose religious freedom? And we had honest dialogue in our panel discussion when religious freedom imposes on our right to live by examining and providing a healthy critique for the responsibility of the Black church in dismantling narratives that promote Christian nationalist ideas as an institution that has historically championed the social needs of Black people and the poor in America. We also extensively discussed how the lack of understanding on religious freedom issues intersect with the social concerns and negative impact on communities of color and historically excluded communities. And then we concluded yesterday with a powerful conversation titled Position to Make Change and Take Action that featured women who are doing work on the ground in local, state, national, and global levels to make sure that they're prioritizing fair and equitable policies that benefit all of humanity and our right to live. And so here we are today, our final day of Reimagining Religious Freedom. And I just want to frame this morning's conversation before our presenters come by sharing this. We have to remember those that came before us, that really paved the way for things to happen, for progress and change to occur. Right now, I'm specifically thinking about the gratitude that I have for Miss Evelyn Butts. She was a Black woman from the state of Virginia, who sued the governor of Virginia to overturn the poll tax in 1966 on the grounds that it violated the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution. And it's also important that we remember those elected officials who are pushing things forward, such as Sia Price from Newport News, who, along with many other Virginia lawmakers, have worked tirelessly to ensure that we have access to voting, and that it has been expanded here in the state of Virginia. So I encourage you to look back at the history in your state, your location, to see the change makers that have made a difference, that have made it possible for us to exercise the rights that we have without discrimination. And so with that, we're going to engage in advocacy training this morning, hosted by our friends at the BJC. And so I would like to invite them to come on screen. So we first have with us Reverend Charles Watson Jr., who is the Director of Education at the BJC. For those that didn't hear his introduction yesterday, Charles is a native of Millen, Georgia. He also is a U.S. veteran of the Air Force, and he once worked as a children's hospice chaplain. So we want to thank you, Charles, for joining us this morning. We also have with us Mr. Jaziah Masters, who is the Advocacy and Outreach Manager at the BJC. Jaziah is a native of Dallas, Texas, and he recently earned a second master's degree, right, Jaziah? Is it the first or the second? So
first, but we can speak the second into existence.
Yes, we will, because it will happen. So we're so delighted that you've joined us, Jaziah. Jaziah mobilizes many faith communities on issues around religious freedom and showing us how to take action, how to contact our elected officials. And so you will hear more from him this morning. So thank you, Jaziah, for joining us. And then finally, we have with us Reverend Rochelle Andrews, who will present after our friends at the BJC. She is, and I just wanted to invite her to come on screen real quickly. Reverend Andrews is also, she's a graduate of Wesley Theological Seminary, but she serves as the assistant director for the Center for Public Theology there. She is an ordained elder in her church, and she also serves with the United Methodist Church. She's ordained with the AME Church, and so we're delighted that she has joined us this morning. And we're grateful for all of you being here with us today as you hear from these incredible speakers. So I just want to say thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you to all of our attendees. This session is being recorded. Now, when the recording comes out, it might be in bite-sized pieces. So I hope that you take great notes and pay attention this morning to what our presenters will share. And so with that, I will turn it over to Charles and Jaziah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Dent, and great to be with you again this morning, everybody that's here, and for my colleague, Jaziah, that is also with us. We're going to take a little time and go through a little bit of an advocacy training that we don't know how many of you have ever done any advocacy on the Hill or anything, but we want to walk through this. So we want to take it from the basic all the way up to you actually going and doing that. So we don't want to insult anybody's intelligence by how we start off, but advocacy is something that needs to be understood from the root all the way up. So we will do it in that manner. So we're going to do it in a PowerPoint, but we also want to be interactive. So if anytime you have questions, let us know, and we will save a little time for Q&A at the end.
So I can go ahead and get us started with that PowerPoint, Charles.
As Dr. Dent mentioned, we both work at BJC. We always want you to follow us on social media, any of the platforms you may be on, and our executive director, Amanda Tyler on Twitter. So if you haven't followed us, go ahead and start following us and visit our website and see more about us as we go there. And we stand for faith, freedom for all. All right. So what is advocacy? All right. So everybody throws the word advocacy out there and stuff, but the definition is act of pleading for, supporting, or recommending. All right. And so one that pleads for the cause. You know, people kind of think advocacy and lobbying are the same thing. That's not always the same thing. You can be an advocate for certain things. Lobbying is another step forward, but we do have lobbyists on the Hill. BJC's not a lobbyist, but we do advocate and we mobilize our people that love us and rock with us. We mobilize them to be able to advocate and give credence to them to reach out to their representatives. Is a person that argues and supports a cause or policy. And for us, it's religious freedom, but that comes in many different forms. So there's different types of advocacy. You know, there's personal advocacy, speaking on someone's behalf. Many of you have probably done that before in many ways with your friends and doing that. There's legal advocacy where it comes into trials and different things like that, and people bring those people in to vouch for them or advocate for a certain thing. That's a form of advocacy. Then you have legislative advocacy, which we're going to focus on today, as you do in Congress, legislative bodies, city councils, and many people only think of advocacy in this place as Washington, D.C. and Congress there, but you have your state representatives and you have your city council meetings where you can be an advocate for policies that are coming out. Public awareness campaigns, we see it all over social media where people are putting out public awareness campaigns to get involved in this. And many of you find out about the things that are going on across this world from social media. That's one of the good things about social media. We're able to get it out and people are able to say, get behind a cause and that's a great thing. And public protests and demonstrations. We have that under the First Amendment, the right to do that. And so those are all forms of advocacy that we have. But BJC does a different form of advocacy that comes up, and that's faith-based advocacy. All right. There's people of all faiths, none have the right and responsibility to engage and constructively in the public square. That's all of us. If you have something that you believe in and it comes from your faith, but it still has a secular purpose, then you should be advocating for it. There's nothing wrong with things that come from a faith-based part of you bringing that to the public square. You don't have to check your religion at the door, but you have to understand that your religion can't trump anybody else's religion, and that you can work with other religious people or non-religious people for the benefit of those who need to be advocated for, or the benefit of a law, or a bill that needs to be passed. So always keep that in mind. And as faith-based, it's a little different. We have this thing called the Johnson Amendment. We won't get into that, but basically what we're saying with the Johnson Amendment is if you are a faith-based organization, 501c3, there's only a certain amount of lobbying that you can do, but you can do a lot of advocating for causes. And also with that, you're advocating for these people. You're not then becoming partisan. You can't tell people who to vote for. You can't get into that. Now you can talk about policies, and that's what we're doing here, but you can't talk about officials that are running for office and telling people, hey, vote for this person, vote for this person. All right. So that's a part of what it means to be a faith-based advocate. And we've seen that in examples from the past. Many of you, we Baptist Joint Committee, so we kind of talk about the good history of Baptists. There's some bad history of Baptists as we've talked about before, but John Leland is one of those Baptists in Virginia that and Virginia Baptists that fought for the First Amendment having the clauses that it has in the religious clauses. And at that time, they were very popular, and so much so that if they would have ran for office, they would have won. And one of the advocacy things that he did was say, if you don't put this in, then I'll run against you. And so that was him using his leverage and his power to make sure that the First Amendment actually had the clauses in it to protect religious freedom, that form of advocacy. And all of us know about the civil rights movement. advocating for whether it was Voting Rights Act or just the fair treatment. All of those things came from people, grassroots advocacy, going to not only Congress, but rallying people in their churches, rallying people in their communities to be advocates. And one of the best things about that faith-based advocacy was that it involved more than just one religious group. It involved religious people, it involved people of different faiths, it involved more than just your central players in that we kind of uphold and push up. There were a lot of people that were involved and put their not only their life on the line, but just everyday life, everyday part of their stuff on the line. It became who they were. It wasn't just a part of them, it was who they were. They were advocates for justice. Next slide there, Jaziah. So then we have legislative advocacy.
Yeah, so I can take it from here, Charles. As Sabrina mentioned, I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Manager at BJC. And so what my role is to, when we see things going on in Congress or on the Hill and see that is an opportunity to engage BJC and BJC advocates in, it has some tie to religious liberty, that is what we do. So a lot of what I'm about to talk about is a lot of these is a congressional visit. So going actual to an office at your state or local, state, local, even federal legislature, and what that looks like. So a lot of people get intimidated by that process of, oh my goodness, I'm going to actually talk to an elected official, but it is something that, you all are constituents. It is part of your right, as Charles said, to engage constructively. So what my part is just demystifying that process a little bit and saying, hey, it's okay, we can talk about it, and here's how we're going to do it. So what to expect when you arrive at the office. So I have points here and you all can feel free to take notes, and I'll just kind of talk through why each is important. I think in terms, especially at the congressional level in DC, a lot of people are surprised when they see that they're meeting with a young person. Confessional, I'm 26 and have done these meetings before. So that is, just to say that, hey, a lot of the people doing this work are actually, pretty young, but that doesn't mean they don't have experience, particularly in their area. So yes, when you get there, you will probably be meeting with a relatively younger person. It's helpful to, with these next points, arrive early and be flexible. Life, as we've all seen at the Capitol and in politics, is a little hectic. So it's good to, get there a little early, center yourself, calm down, look at your surroundings, kind of just feel comfortable in it. It's helpful for you to, or I've at least seen it's helpful for those who are doing this work to get there and settle down a bit. Next point I'd like to mention, people go into these rooms and they think that I need to have all the answers. I need to have a list of talking points and I need to, hit every piece of each note. And that's not necessarily the case. As a constituent, I don't think any staffer expects you to know completely everything. They're asking questions. They're wanting to get to know this issue and this work. And I just like to encourage people to remember that, hey, the thing you're an expert about most is your story. You took this issue and you saw that this spoke to you in a way, and that's really what you should lead with and say why this issue, bill, whatever it is important to you. And then the next one, again, the logistical piece, you had a great conversation and that staffer probably has, 5 other meetings that day. So it's good to bring something with you, a leave behind, we like to call it, where that's just basically an outline of what you just said. Here's the 5 points I want you to remember, and give that, hopefully printed piece of paper to the staffer. And that way they'll be able to refer back to it in a staff meeting or something like that. So that's what to expect when you get there. Here's what to say when you're actually in the meeting. So I always like to do introductions. What is a connection that you have to these individuals? This is not a lot of times on TV we can see, politicians, they're big names and all of that. But this is another person, a human being sitting in front of you. So it's okay to introduce yourself and make a connection. I found that the most effective meetings, especially, these people, especially in DC, meet a lot of people. It's good to say, hey, get to know them a little bit. Talk about where you grew up if it was in their district. And they say, oh, you went to that high school. My dad was a teacher there, something like that. You kind of want to start off at this next point, thanking them for their time. Staffers really appreciate kindness. Let me tell you, as someone who has been in these offices, we get a lot of calls. A lot of people are not, I don't know if y'all are aware of this, a lot of people are not happy with their elected officials, and they like to call and tell them. And those staffers are often on the receiving end of that phone. So it's nice. We appreciate it as a staffer when someone comes and says, hey, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I know you're pretty busy. As I mentioned a little bit a while ago, tell your story. What about this issue resonates with you? Why did you take time out of your busy day to get informed about this issue and want to bring this to someone who can make a difference about it attention? If you can follow up with the data and statistics and all that good stuff, you can have that in your leave behind, but really just tell a story. And in this next point, this is probably the most important point. You got there, you hit your points, you told them what you want to say, and then, make sure you have an ask. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to vote in favor of something? Do you want them to co-sponsor something? What is it? How can they make you happy? That is what the staffer will, that's kind of lingering in their mind. What can I do to make this person happy? So tell them what you want, give them an ask. And yeah, to wrap it up, thank you for your time, and then confirm any outlines or things that they may want you to follow up with. If they have questions, definitely let them know. And then post-meeting, I've always found it helpful to ask for a business card. You get so excited, you met with someone, you're driving home, you're like, now who was that I met with? What was their name? How do I contact them for the follow-up? So take a business card. That is, a little old school, but that's usually how these offices work. You can always send them a thank you email or a handwritten note. If they requested any follow-up documents, feel free to send them that. Your leave behinds, if they want an electronic version, see that. This next point, leave the leave behinds. Make sure that you don't take that with you. That's just a logistical thing. And then be intentional and strategic about maintaining the relationship. Charles always brings up this good point. You don't necessarily want to have to meet with your elected officials when, quote unquote, the house is on fire or something is happening and you want them to vote no or you're angry. You can also meet with them about positive things. Oh, I saw that you supported something that I also support. Thank you for doing that. Just find opportunities to engage that aren't necessarily, do this for me, or yes, make it be, just an ongoing strategic relationship. And so, Charles.
that last part is, and Jaziah said it, but I just want to reiterate it. Jaziah has worked on both sides of this. Jaziah has been a staffer, and so he sat in on people coming in, talking to him, and now with us, he organizes these events for us to go talk. And so the things he's saying is from personal experience. And that last part he was talking about, that's just like with any relationship. If you have a good friend and that friend only comes to you when they need something, you start, missing their calls. Let's just be honest. You start saying, nah, you only reach out to me when you need something. These representatives of human are human too. So if you can say, you know what, I just called today to say thank you for doing this, this, and this, or hey, I'm glad that you were able. I saw you out in front of certain things. Thank you for doing that, and that. The other thing that we didn't put on here, we didn't mention is a lot of your representatives have like meet and greets during the month where somebody can just come in and meet. If you're one of the constituents, you can just have breakfast with them and stuff. That's a good place to start too. If you feel like it's too much just to start meeting with somebody, then maybe sign up for lunch or breakfast with your constituent, with your representative that they have each month, where you're not in there by yourself, you're just in there with other people. You're able to meet, and that'd be the first time you met them. But don't get discouraged if you don't meet your representative. It's okay to meet a staffer, because to be honest with you, that staffer that meets with you may know more about the issue than the representative does. And so that representative is going to go back to the staffer and ask, hey, this is coming up. What do we know about it? And that now that staffer can go back to the notes that you gave and said, wait a minute, they gave me these good notes. I'm going to give it to them. And so the next time you come back to them, they'll probably be thanking you for, hey, making them look good. If you do the right thing, you're going to make them look good in front of their boss. And it's reciprocal. So they start listening to you more. But if all you're doing is coming in, trying to say something bad, calling something bad, it's just like human nature to X out, oh, we know who those people are. We don't want to hear them anymore. They didn't follow up on what they did. I'm definitely not listening to them again because, you know, I can't even, they made me look bad in front of my boss, and nobody wants that. So we have a opportunity to do that in this legislation. And being an advocate, we can get things done, but there's a good way to go about it. And like I say, you're not going to like everything they've done, but when you do, reach out. If you don't have nothing good to say, don't say nothing at all. But if you do have something good to say, do reach out with them in that. So,
and Charles, just really quickly, I want to add, you know, a lot of what we're talking about is at the federal, congressional, and Washington, D.C. level. But all of this is applicable, you know, again, to the local and state level. And yes. I've been in state offices where, you know, people often forget, hey, you know, what goes on at the state hits you almost more directly than what goes on at the federal level. Exactly. So it is probably even more so necessary for you to meet at those levels and take these, you know, all this applies across the board.
And you know what, Jaziah, you correct me if I'm wrong here, the first time I've said this, but it's almost like a parent-teacher meeting. You know, you're following up. You're going in there. You want to talk. You want to know what's going on in the classroom, or you want to come and advocate for your child that's been doing these things, and you know. So you're following up with that, and so you're going there in the same manner. You know, you want the best for whatever issue you have going on. You want them to hear about it, and so don't think of. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't think of it as some big thing that you can't do. You can do this, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes for you. But it's definitely a part of who we are and who we should be as citizens that are doing everything that we can to push good legislation through.
Charles, I think that's a very good metaphor right there, the parent-teacher conference. I'm going to borrow that with purpose, as you like to say.
There you go.
But
Don't steal
it. People, you all are voters. You are constituents. You know, a lot of times people come to these offices and they're scared of me. I'm like, well, actually, I'm the one who's scared of you because, hey, I have to go tell my boss today. You know, people in your district came to meet with me and they were not happy about what you did. So yes, definitely approach these situations that way.
So the next thing we want to do is, hey, I'm a person of nostalgia, but some of us don't always understand. People say bills and people say legislation, but all of us don't always understand how it really goes. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember these schoolhouse rock things, and we're gonna watch this one about the bill, and then we're gonna talk directly about a piece of legislation that we're involved in that we want you to advocate for. And so, but a part of that process is learning how the process goes. So let's get a refresher on what it means to be a bill.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share the sound now, so you all should be able to hear this. And yeah.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in.
Sorry about that.
In committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. and I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. How I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
Now, I hope many of you have seen that before, have learned how to do that. But I always refer back to that just because that's how it goes. I mean, it's literally how it goes. And sometimes we forget where things are. We hear about a House bill or a Senate bill and stuff, and we don't know what's going on with it. But that is the process. And so just wanted to run that through you and get a little nostalgia for some of you. And for others of you, that was the first time you saw that. It's there for you now. Now you have it in your memory bank. So let's go to the next slide there, Jaziah. So one of the pieces of legislation that is going through and part of a bill right now is the Save Oak Flat Act. You may have heard of it. It's advocating for religious liberty by protecting sacred land. And BJC has been a part of this, of our indigenous community. And Sabrina, Dr. Dent mentioned earlier that it was Native American Heritage Month. And, you know, this bill that is coming through, we're trying to protect some sacred land for them out in Arizona. So let's talk a little bit about what Save Oak Flat is. So this bill is there to protect this site, sacred Western Apache people. One of the things, this is out in Arizona, but one of the things I want to say about this is not just like a new bill that came up, or new legislation that they're trying to get in. Actually, the land was protected by a law with President Eisenhower. Protected this land for them. And now there's some money interest and some other interest into it. And they are trying to break through that and renegotiate that part, or, you know, the time period may have ran out. And so the people that are for this bill are actually trying to make sure that part of the land remains protected. So right now, a foreign mining company will be coming in, trying to come in and actually to destroy some of that land and make it a mining operation. And many of you may have not have seen any mining operations. And sorry, we don't have a picture for it, but it creates a big crater in the land. And pretty much the land is still there somewhat, but the scenery is gone. Everything is, you know, these craters are so deep. I can't remember how many football fields deep these craters are become. But that would happen to this Oak Flat area if this mining company was able to come in, and it'll permanently destroy it. One thing that happens is these mining companies, when they do this, they don't come back and refill it with anything. It's just left how it is. And pretty much the reason they want to do it is for jobs. It does bring in jobs at the beginning, but then once the mining is done, those jobs are gone. And the crater is there and everything else is just left how it is. All right. And so this, as you can see, the representative that's the chair of the House Natural Resources Committee, he's pushing for this, but he needs co-sponsors. And so what do we mean by co-sponsors? He needs other representatives from across the nation to join in co-sponsoring the bill. So that's where you come in. That's where you come in to say, you know what, I feel like this is a cause that we should stand up for. So I should reach out to my representative and ask. Remember, Jaziah told you, always have an ask. Your ask would be, hey, Representative, I have family out in Arizona, or I am just an advocate for Native American, indigenous people, and I'm a faith-based person that knows how sacred my church is, or my synagogue, or my mosque is to me. Please consider co-sponsoring this bill to save the Oak Flat area for the indigenous people that are out in Arizona. Now, if anybody on this call is from Arizona, it's even more closer to heart to you, and you can reach out and make that connection to all the representatives that are out there. But this is what this bill is about. Next slide there.
Yeah, and so Charles kind of talked a bit about the talking points, but I don't want to speak for Charles or Dr. Dent, but I will say, BJC really got in this work because we realized that, we kind of, to this last point, we support religious liberty for everyone, and in the history of it, I don't need to tell you all about the history of this country, but we have long since done a disservice to our Native American and Indigenous American brothers and sisters. So this standing up and doing this work, from our privileged position is work that is meaningful to us. And so I just wanted to do that as a disclaimer, but for kind of building on to what Charles said about our talking points, so some things about this bill that could come up in a conversation with a staffer. First one, bipartisanship. Believe it or not, that word still rings very well in Washington, D.C. Both Republicans and Democrats have signaled that they support this bill through co-sponsor. And so BJC, to the second point, is part of an interfaith coalition of, now it's over 60 religious freedom groups, but yes, over 60 religious groups supporting the protection of this sacred land. Charles mentioned that for those of us with a faith tradition, we have our churches, our synagogues, these places are important to us. Well, the tribe in Arizona, they have Oak Flat. This is a site where they do religious and cultural ceremonies. This is their burial ground. They go here for, plants, food, water, and that will not be the case if there is a crater where they go to practice their religion. And also, Charles also mentioned this point, use your personal story. It's okay to say, I've never been to Arizona, I've never seen Oak Flat, but you know what? I have a sacred space, and the idea of it being destroyed for a mining operation is deeply upsetting to me, deeply troubling to me. And yes, you don't have to just, there's a lot of ways you can approach this. You can approach it from a religious faith. You can approach it from an environmental faith. Hey, if there's a crater in the ground, Arizona does not have a lot of, water resources that's, negatively contributing to that. So there are several ways you could approach this, but just make it authentic and personal to you.
Indeed. And like I say, at this point, this was a part of a bill that was going in. It has gotten dropped from that bill. So now the idea of more co-sponsors is even more important to get it back in. When we saw the video of when it's in the House or in the Senate, they all this arguing and negotiating. Well, sometimes they will drop things that don't seem like they have much of an importance to it, or if they don't have anybody supporting it enough, or just to be honest, or they have people that are in bed with the mining companies, and it's more people in bed with the mining companies than there are co-sponsors for this bill. And then they say, hey, we need to wipe this off. We'll wipe this off, and you give us this and if you take away that, or the negotiation, it's harder to do that when you have more co-sponsors that actually care about it. And to be honest with you, representatives have a lot of things they can care about, but if they have more constituents caring about an issue, then they start caring about it because they realize they don't want to disappoint their constituents. And unfortunately, we've gotten so disconnected from talking to our representative, and letting them know what we want, that they can make decisions and it doesn't even affect whether they get reelected or not, because the big issues are the only issues people care about anymore, or the D and the R are the only things that people care about anymore. But what we need to have is actually advocacy and people going to their representatives talking about the issues that actually matter. And so this is just an example of one that we can do there. Let's see what time we have here, because we want to make sure we leave time for questions. But I think we have a time for a little simulation. So Jaziah and I are going to do a little role play of this for you, and then we'll do some questions. So I'm going to be the staffer because I'm older than Jaziah, even though it doesn't always go that way. Sometimes you may be older than the person that you're talking to. And so Jaziah is going to meet with me, and I'm pretty sure that this is happening virtual sometimes now because of things that are going on. And so, I'm going to be the staffer, and Jaziah is going to come in and talk to me about whatever's on his mind. I don't even know what's on his mind. I don't know which thing he's going to do today, but we can do that. So I'll start off. Hey, nice to meet you. My name is Charles Watson.
Nice to meet you, Charles. My name is Jaziah. I just want to say thank you, for taking the time to meet with me. I know you're pretty busy up there, so thank you.
No problem. No problem. How can I help you today?
I know you don't have a lot of time, so I'll just get right to it. There is a bill in the House, H.R. 1884, the Save Oak Flat Act. That is a bill that is being considered, and I'm going to ask you and your representative, your boss, to co-sponsor this piece of legislation. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about it, but I wanted to give you what the ask was for right off the top. So Oak Flat is a sacred land to the Native and Indigenous people in Arizona. This is, I don't know, your faith background and everything, but I come from a faith background that says I have to protect and defend everyone's religious liberty. So, the idea of this sacred site in Arizona being destroyed for a mining company is very disturbing to me. And so have you at all heard about this?
I haven't heard about the bill, but I'm here in Virginia, and my representative is Virginia. But you say this is in Arizona, and so, but you care about it, and you think my boss should care about it.
Absolutely. So even though this is in Arizona, yes, this is a bill that is supported by several representatives in several states, including an Arizona congressperson. So I do want you to take a second look at it, and let me just give you some of the reasons why. It
already has co-sponsors?
Yes, yes, it does. Okay. Bipartisan co-sponsors, I might add.
Good.
I have a little sheet with me with some talking points on it that I'll be happy to email you after this meeting. But just to go through it, so again, this is Oak Flat, a sacred land to the Native Americans in Arizona. This land is being considered for development from a mining company. Now, that mining company is going to completely wipe out this area. The Native Americans use this land for medicine purpose. They do it for their culture. They do it for their ceremonies. And so I think that, as a Virginian, we have a strong history of religious liberty there. How can we practice religious liberty in a place that's destroyed? We, in this country, I don't need to tell you, but we have a long history of I'll use the term exploiting the people who were here long before any of us were. So I think it would be incredible if you took a stand and joined as a co-sponsor to that bill.
Okay. All right. So, but you did mention, I little bit of pushback. You did mention mining, and there are going to be jobs and stuff created with this, correct? So, what would my representative say to his colleague that says there's jobs may be created by this? So why don't we why would I be against this?
That is a very fair point. I'm glad you raised that. Yes, this destroying of this land will certainly produce jobs, but I also want you to hold that in one hand and hold equally in the other hand that one, this is a sacred site that is not coming back. Two, the jobs have an end date. Once the mining operation is done, that the job is over. Three, this will also, destroy, the crater that will be done will also affect the water supply in Arizona and other various pieces of the environment in Arizona. So jobs at what cost, I guess, is the best way for me to
so you're not
into that.
You're talking faith-based stuff, but you also, there's an environmental thing here, there's a jobs thing here, there's more than just you being a person of faith that just believes in protecting land. There's different areas here.
Absolutely, yes. This is not just a religious liberty issue. There are some serious environmental concerns as well that I'm happy to include in this follow-up that I'll send to you.
Yeah. I mean, meeting with a lot of people. Please send me over that stuff and let me know. And I'm glad you came to meet with me today. Is there anything else you need from me?
Just again, to underscore the ask, I would like you to ask the representative to co-sponsor this bill, the Save Oak Flat Act. All right. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you again for meeting with us, and I'll make sure this gets to him.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Walking out of the office.
All right. So we're done with that. And it literally is just that. I want to say easy, but you do have to know your talking points. You do have to know who you're talking to, and you also have to know, don't step outside of your boundary. If it's something you don't know, don't say it. Say you will get back to them, or stick with your points on there. The only thing I will say is it's harder in this virtual thing, but you want to make sure that you know that you have all of the person's information. I mean, it's easier when you in front of them because you're going to get their card. But if you're going to do this virtual thing, follow up, make sure you got the right email, which email you want me to send the stuff to, and knowing all of this. So that's how it is done on every level. The good thing about once you learn advocacy and have done this before, that means you can do it again on any level with any issue. It's the same with that. So that's the front of our advocacy training. Jaziah, you got anything else before we answer questions here?
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly again, to Charles' point, you don't have to know everything, but you can already have the leave behind materials, whether you in person or you hand them over or email them over. That has all the points. There's a lot of points on this paper in front of me, but I stuck with the two that were most relevant to me. And the staffer can follow up with reading the materials and translating that to the office.
Now, I'll say one more thing, and again, it's according to how you want to do it. If you do know who you're going to meet with, it's okay to prepare and say, look up where that person went to college, where that person did this, so you can make some kind of connection. I've done that before. Like, I'm from Georgia, so I'd meet with somebody and I'd say, oh, you went to this university. I had a friend that graduated from there, or a cousin that graduated from there. And what year? Oh, do you know each other? Those type of things actually help. So if you have the time to look that up, do that. But the main thing is have your story, know what you want to ask, and go in there and talk to them like you would want somebody to talk to you, and do that. So that has been our advocacy presentation there.
And one last slide that I'll share with you all.
That's right. Yes,
you all can take action on this right now. So I don't think a lot of people know this, but there is a Capitol switchboard where that number that I bolded and can also drop in the chat, I would save that number in your phone. You can call about Oak Flat, a co-sponsor, that would be great, but you can also call about any other piece of federal legislation that, as much as your heart desires, all you need to do is call this number and the person on the other end will connect you to the office. So you will need to, if you don't know who your current representative is, you can look that up, type your address, and then say, hi, call this number. Hi, I would like to speak to Representative insert name here. And you'll be connected to the office and you can make your ask there. So I would definitely save this number in your phone. That is, just one of a very practical advocacy step that you can do. And yeah, I think we have some time for questions now, Charles.
Yeah, so you can put the question in the chat, or you can open up and share your mic and just have any questions for us there. I think I saw one in the chat already here. Rama says, how current does the bill need to be to do this? Like a bill like Violence Against Women Act renewal, then that has been lingering for years. That's a good question. Jaziah, do you know any of that? Does it have to be right current, or as long as it's still a bill? I'm gonna say this as a guess. I'm pretty sure that if something has been lingering, the thing that stops it from lingering is more people talking about it and bringing it up. So I would say there's no statute of limitation on that. But Jaziah, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely, Charles. I think you're definitely on the right point. I think when something is lingering, like the Violence Against Women Act renewal, I believe my understanding is that it is because someone had an objection to it, so it got paused. And, then there's all these other things happening on. So, the public awareness kind of moves off that. But yes, if you continue to, voice your concern and outrage that, hey, why hasn't this been renewed? People can kind of put that back on the radar and say, oh, yes. And then that can be included in other, bills or pieces to get that done. But yeah.
And then it also,
awareness is so important.
It goes back to the other advocacy things that we were saying. If the public awareness has been brought down, then you need to go back to the other advocacy ways of advocating, getting the grassroots things going again, getting it turned back up so that you can bring more to the representative when that time comes. There's other ways of advocating, like we were saying, the social media stuff, regenerating that, putting it back out, getting the awareness back up, and that way it can stop it from lingering of being an issue that's in the past. Let's see. What online resources would you recommend to help us keep abreast of current legislative issues?
So Charles, can I jump in really quickly for this one? One other advocacy piece that Charles, you, Jennifer, or the rest of the BJC staff always likes to include is get to know your representatives. Charles, to use your point about the parent-teacher conference, representatives send out progress reports, quote unquote, in the forms of their email and their newsletter. So that's one way to keep track of, even though, you may feel some type of way about your representative, it is still good to know what they may be doing. So I would encourage you to use that resource of subscribing to their newsletter. So when they say, hey, I did, XYZ today in Congress, you'll be able to say, oh, okay, I support that. And, again, to try and get back to Charles' point, that is a way that you can call and say, thank you for doing that. Or I saw that you were doing this, I'm following you. So that is one way that I would say you could follow.
Yeah, and then, when it comes to religious liberty issues, also look to us. We have a lot of those things on our website and that. But I do believe, and again, just like the SCOTUS on the Supreme Court website, that the issues are there. I think there are a lot of ways that you can find those issues in our House of Representatives and our Senate, the things that they're actually voting on and going about. I don't know the exact website of that, but I'm sure if you go to the official websites of those, they have every legislation that's in there. And I'm sorry that we don't have that. What I'll try to do is get back to you on those direct sites that are doing that. But every state has that. Just like when you go to vote and there's a there's legislation on that vote that let's vote on this act, HR such and such, or this act here. Those things are public knowledge beforehand. It does take a little bit of research to do that. And like I said, I'm sorry I don't have the direct website to do those things, but I know they're there. I know they're and have access to them. That doesn't get publicized enough, and that's a good question, because that brings another point. We don't publicize those things enough. Like I say, I like social media, but a lot of the things that we have on social media, we spend more time doing that than understanding the exact legislation that's being put up. And we need to get back to that and doing it and understanding that. And also, if any of you out there looking to start your own organization, do your thing, that might be a place for you where you can keep people abreast of those things that are going on in every state. That may be something that may be a website that you need to start. It says, hey, we can always say, come to this website because they have everything from each state that's going on, and you can find it in one place.
Charles, I will just quickly piggyback off of what you said. I think you did a great point, and I'll just quickly do a shameless plug. There are organizations, find organizations that are doing work that you're passionate about. If it's in environmental issues, if those are the issues you want to stay abreast of, there are a host of environmental issues, so many of which I'm getting to learn as we work together on Oak Flat. If you're at all interested in religious liberty and respecting everyone's religion, I know an organization that works well with that, my BJC, my current organization. So yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jaziah, I don't want to put it on blast, but you was at Congressional Black Caucus and worked there. Do they have any stuff on things that they're issues that they are pushing on their website or anything like that? Or is that something that doesn't happen as much?
Absolutely. Yes. Again, so many organizations, but yes, the Congressional Black Caucus, specifically has a Black agenda. What should, African Americans, what are the issues that are facing, specifically them, and what is being done, in Congress to address that? So that's another one, whether it's identity issue areas. There are so many organizations that, yes.
The last one I'll put a pitch in for is it's actually Equal Justice Initiative down there in Brian Stevenson. They always are working on different legislation dealing with criminal justice reform, prison reform, just the justice system in general. So that's another website that I would say always frequently visit and be a part of. That's just a personal thing that I am a part of every time that they have something going on. So I would say look there. Any other questions on what we went over today? Any questions on you making a visit, or things that you still may have a little anxiety about? I hope that the stuff that we did today actually helps you, that if you have never made a visit, and if you've made it before, I hope it encourages you to make more visits.
Absolutely. If there are no more questions, I'll just say, constituents matter. Your voice matters. As someone who has been on that side, sitting at that desk, yes, that people need to hear from you all more often.
Indeed. Well, we just want to thank Dr. Sabrina Dent for allowing us to be a part of this. Again, both of us work at BJC, so if you haven't been around and known us, please get to know us. Don't hesitate to email us, and so we can work together. Jaziah, if you'll drop both our emails in the chat real quick. And Absolutely. Then I also want to, like I say, take the time to thank Dr. Sabrina Dent for all her work with this the last couple of days and also today. So I'm gonna turn it back over to her, and we just thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charles and Jaziah. That was an incredible presentation. and so important. I actually perked up a little bit more because, advocacy work is what I did for a little bit of time. And so I really appreciate what you brought to this conversation, and some of the points that you mentioned in terms of the different types of advocacy is so important and critical that we know that. But I can't emphasize enough in terms of building relationship and getting a better understanding of our representatives, as you all pointed out, and making those connections. As I put in the chat, I actually stated that I have done virtual lobby visits during COVID, and I ended up meeting with the staffers. And that's the same information that I was mindful of what you talked about, like be respectful of the staffers because they know the issues. They're on the front lines, as Jaziah was in the work. And so your presentation to them needs to be as sharp as if you were in front of that representative. So I highly recommend people to contact the staffers. They provided the number in the chat. And at the same time, you can go online. There is a place online that you can go to find out who is your representative for your area, and also beyond the newsletter, that your representative might have automated calls that they send out. I know my representative Don Byer will send out a blast, a voicemail message letting us know that when he's having a town hall meeting and to discuss the issues that are important and the work that he's doing. So I again, I can't say it enough. Thank you, Jaziah and Charles, for the work that you're doing on behalf of faith communities and support of non-religious individuals, and that you're fighting for faith freedom for all. And I highly recommend, I am a BJC fellow and board member, so I also highly recommend that you look at some of the videos that they've done over the last year plus, and conversations highlighting the issues and then the role that we can play to support other communities. So thank you again, Jaziah and Charles. I look forward to sharing this video with other people, and I did take a screenshot of you doing the role play.
Sabrina, can I make one more plug? Since it's Native American Heritage Month, we're doing our Voices of Native American Faith Freedom. And next week, next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m., I'm going to be interviewing Mark Charles, who is a Native American who has also been a 2020 presidential candidate, but also has talked about what faith freedom means to Indigenous people. And he's the author of the book, Unsettling Truths. And so if you can, it's going to be on Facebook Live with BJC. It's next week, Wednesday at 10:30 and a.m. And so I hope everybody can join us there. And we've also done this for Voices of Black Faith Freedom, Voices of Asian American and Pacific Islander Faith Freedom, Voices of Latin American and Hispanic Faith Freedom. And so this is just something that we've been continuing to do to uplift other voices. And these conversations have been great. And they have been, I've learned so much from them. So I hope that, yes, we just had one last week with Reverend Mitch Randall out in Oklahoma. So if you get a chance, our website and check out all of those conversations that we've had in the past. So thank you for that, Dr. Dent.
My pleasure, Charles. Thank you. Thank you.
I just dropped the link in the chat, so thank you.
Oh, wonderful. So now that we've learned about advocacy and the things that we can do to take action in our communities and connecting with our elected officials and on a local, state, and national level. Remember, these skills are transferable, right? And so it's important that you remember that. Now that you've learned that, I also want us to move a little further in our engagement. So I'm delighted again to introduce our friend, Reverend Rochelle Andrews, who is the Assistant Director for the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Theological Seminary. And the reason why we brought Reverend Andrews, who is one of our partners for this event, with the Center for Public Theology is one of our partners as well as the BJC, is it was important for me to share the incredible work that is happening at Wesley through this program. And so Reverend Andrews will give you more information about it. But sometimes there are seminarians and people of faith like me who do not travel or take the traditional route in ministry. We do, our ministry is more of a public ministry that involves advocacy and other ways of showing up in the world. And so I knew early on that my ministry would be different, although I am licensed as a minister, that the Center for Public Theology offers a program where seminarians and faith leaders can take a deeper dive in understanding public policy and how to engage. And so that is part of Reverend Andrews' journey, that she has been doing this work for over, now it's been about 6 years, including the time that you were in the program. Well, before then, I know that, but I'm talking about with Wesley, right? So this is someone that was a student in the program and then eventually ran the program as an assistant, and now is directing the program. And so I'm so excited that she is with us today. So Reverend Andrews, I want to invite you back to talk about the Faith and Politics program that is happening at Wesley Theological Seminary. So welcome again.
Thank you, Dr. Dent. I am so excited to be here. Look, I even put on my Wesley shirt today, which I don't often wear, except when I'm going out recruiting. But I am so happy to be with you all today. And so what I want to share a little bit is about the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Seminary. And so one of the things that is I'm going to make sure I can share my screen. And can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I'm using, to just bear with me, because I'm using Canva for my presentation today instead of my traditional PowerPoint. So I'm trying to be fancy, so y'all bear with me. But one of the things, so Wesley Theological Seminary is where we are located. We're in Northwest DC, and we're excited. I'm thankful for that. But I'm here because I'm part of the Center for Public Theology. And the Center for Public Theology basically came about because Wesley had actually been offering a class called National Capital Semester for Seminarians, NCSS for short. And they had actually been offering the class in spring of 2022 when we offer it. It will be the 45th year, I believe, of offering the class. And so it is the oldest public, what we now call public theology class at a seminary in the country. And so they have been offering this class for years. And around about 2013, 2014, they realized that the name of public theology started coming about. And they realized that this was sort of more than just the class. And they also started seeing such an uptick in students who, as Dr. Dent mentioned, were coming through, who were saying, I feel called to ministry. I feel a call sort of to seminary or divinity school, but I'm not feeling that behind the pulpit call. I feel like my ministry will be in what we call the public square. And that's what public theology is. I actually tell people all the time when they ask me for a quick definition of public theology, and I always say, where faith meets the public square. And I say faith because I think that I want to understand, people understand it. It actually is whatever your faith may be. So I'm not trying to limit it to just being, Wesley's a United Methodist school. It's not limited to just being a United Methodist. It's about where your faith meets the public square. I think we talked yesterday. If you were there with us yesterday, you may know I was raised Pentecostal, and then I moved to Nashville, became Baptist when I went to Vanderbilt. And then when I moved up here, I joined a Methodist church, AME church, and Methodist churches because I wanted to there were some more, the social principles and things like that were really appealing to me. So it's always been about my faith and how I use that faith that was important for me versus what particular, I guess, denomination. And so Wesley has this Center for Public Theology. It was officially founded in 2015 by Mike McCurry and Dr. Carolyn Davis. And it is the center where they basically, we're talking about faith in public life. And much like Charles and Jaziah were talking about earlier, what we make sure is, because we have a lot of misconceptions for people in church in thinking that because they are religious, that they can't get into politics or they can't talk about things. But what we help people understand is it's not about the politics is the issues. What are you going to talk about with these issues? And we help students and we help people see those things. And one of the things we do in our faith and politics life, and I will step back and give you tell you a little bit about myself. I was actually a community person, worked in politics, worked for politicians, been campaign manager, all of these things. Loved the social justice aspect of fighting for things, economic development, food justice. I was actually reminded by an auntie the other day that I literally have been working on food justice from the time that I was fighting on getting better summer food programs in East Orange, New Jersey, when I was attending Rutgers. And she got me a summer job working for the program, and I was taking the vendors to task for what they were feeding our children. So I've been in this a long time. Even if I didn't know how to name it then, we name it now Faith and Public Life or Public Theology, but I've been in this for a long time. And when I joined the AME church, they told me to get ordained, I had to go to seminary, or some people like to say seminary school. And I was just distraught a little bit. I'm not even going to lie, because I was just like, I don't want to learn how to preach. I really don't want to do this anyway. I'm just sort of like, God's making me. I don't want to be here. And I was led to go to Wesley, and I got to Wesley and I was like, oh, well, this is okay. And then one day I took one of the elective classes, and the guy was like talking about affordable housing. And we were reading this book, and they were like, the author was Reverend Dr. Joe Daniels. And he's like, walk around your neighborhood and see what it needs, and then ask God to help you get the things. And I was like, wait a minute. He's not telling me to stand behind a pulpit and just pray only. He's telling me to do the things I had been doing. And what public theology helped me see was how to connect my love and my social justice love with ministry. And that ministry wasn't just having to be behind a pulpit in a church, and that the things I had been doing, most importantly, let me just say that, was I had been doing ministry, because I think a lot of times we don't always connect working to make sure people eat, working to make sure people, know these issues, that those are ministry. That what we just saw before this, that was a sermon. That training, that was a sermon. And we don't always connect those things, because those things are life. And so the Center for Public Theology is saying those things. How are we helping train the next generation? And I don't mean age-wise generation, but the next generation of people who in faith and public life, who are going to fight for these things, using their faith, not to just go in the pulpit or not to go in the pew and pray, but using their feet, and more. And also to the point of what we just learned, even in our training, that a lot of times, I know when I started at Wesley, a lot of the students coming in were thinking, when is the next march? And don't get me wrong, marching is important. But if you don't get policies changed, if you don't learn how to do those things, which is why the presentation before this was so very important, all the marching in the world isn't going to help. It may bring some temporary notice to the problem, but it's not going to change anything if you don't make sure you change the policies, if you don't make sure you get the right politicians in who will change those policies. And so that's what we seek to help people learn at the Center for Public Theology. And so at Wesley, what we do is we have these classes. I mentioned the one I took that we talked about affordable housing, and we talk about faith and in politics. And we're not teaching politics in the sense of that you have to vote for a certain person, but we are teaching about looking at what it looks like. What does your faith look like? And so we have classes that are helping students kind of learn how to navigate that space. And so we do some things. Our inaugural director when the committee was formed was Mike McCurry, who was Bill Clinton's press secretary. And so having Professor McCurry was amazing, because I tell people all the time, I was like, when I joined the staff in 2018, I joined the staff at Wesley, but I took the class in spring of the class called NCSS, which is now called NCES. I'll get that later. I took it in spring of 2016, which was when President Obama was still in office. And so we got to go to the White House. But what I loved about the class is that we covered various topics and how, as people of faith, we can help fight or deal with them. And what was funny is then when I became a member of the staff, I was just like, how many people can say that their boss has, John Kerry and Bill Clinton's cell phone number, right? That's the cool thing about the Center for Public Theology, and what we do is that it's really about helping, how do you navigate those things, and not just having the number, but how do we use the number to help us make our world a better place? And so something we do with our students is we sort of kind of have classes that are pushing the limits of what we do. And so that's officially the Wesley, John Wesley rode around on a horse. And so that's our Wesley horse. I call him Hoppy. I think that's what John Wesley called him. And we this picture is actually from Iowa, because we said to our students, as a faith in public life, right? So what was more important in 2020 than the elections? And so we had a few months before that, Mike McCurry had done a class at Wesley about, the importance of elections and all of these things, and helping students, because a lot of times churches kind of don't talk about the elections, and then that means the congregation doesn't get really involved and understand the issues. And if they don't know those issues, all of them, not just the presidential, but also the local, the judges, everything, then that means that they're not engaged, which means they're not out there voting, which means our communities are not what they need to be. And then we're looking at the church to fix a community that could have been fixed by a community that was informed and voted with an informed knowledge, right? So we had this class. And so what came up in one of the classes the year before was, well, why is Iowa so important for the presidential election? And if you follow politics, you know that if you can make it in Iowa, it's pretty much guaranteed that you can make it somewhat through the elections and maybe get on the ticket and then get elected. And so Mike McCurry said, hey, let's take the students to Iowa, to the caucuses. And so we did. And then when we were there, we went to visit some various programs that were helping get out people to vote. We were in Des Moines for a week. Our students met with Cornel West at a Bernie Sanders rally. And then we went to some interfaith things to see and look at. And they really kind of learned then. We were helping them see how to vote on the policies and the issues, because for so many, they were stuck on sort of this politics being I'm telling you to vote for this guy, not that guy, and this is looking at thing. And here's Tom Steyer, who was running for president, who said if he didn't win, he would come to elect Wesley as a student because he felt he loved what we were doing with the faith and politics life. So we're still trying to reach him to get him to come join the thing. But also what we do at the Center for Public Theology is we engage in the community. And so we talk about what's going on. So you see, we had a session where we did a screening of Suppressed to talk about the vote. And that was based on what happened with Stacey Abrams in Georgia. And so what we try to make sure we do is inform the community. We watched Suppressed, we had a discussion, and I think Dr. Dent mentioned Pastor William Lamar from Metropolitan AME Church. He was one of our people to talk about that and come and talk. And we talked about Reverend Terrence McKinley from Sojourners and some others. And so we tried to have an interfaith panel, and we did 2 panels to talk about what is going on. And Plumline at Wesley is actually sort of the student group version of the Center for Public Theology. They are about social justice and issues, and they kind of, as the students, go out and do these things. And we also just recently, we did a screening of the Abraham Heschel story, and we had an interfaith panel on that. And we even had his daughter on to talk about the work of Rabbi Heschel. And so what we see, and we did for the inauguration, we had a inauguration party to watch and chat and talk about what we were expecting and what we hoped to see and what was going on. And so these are the things that we're asking. We're asking people to come and look and watch. And so one of the things we did during the inauguration party was, it wasn't talking about whether, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in and but it was about the expectations and how we were, good and bad. What do we want? How do we do? And I saw, yes, Dr. Dent, I definitely recommend watching the Heschel Story. That film was actually done by Martin Doblmeier, and it was actually the 3rd in a series, maybe fourth. He started with Howard Thurman. And then he did Howard Thurman, he did Niebuhr, Reinhold Niebuhr first, then Howard Thurman, then Dorothy Day, and then this last one. So it's a 4-part series of Joshua Heschel. And except for Dorothy Day, Wesley partnered with Martin to do a debut and to have a watch party and talk about all of these. 2 we were able to do live. Dorothy Day, we didn't do it all because of the pandemic. And then we did Heschel. And I think one of the things about this is that it's engaging the larger community in these talks about faith and public life and how we can continue on with that. We participated in the other, actually, this is the Mobile Institute here, but we also participated in the politics of food. And so we have some students who are engaged in understanding that their ministry is food justice. And so I talked about that with the other mobile institute. And one of the things with Wesley is they are actually growing a garden behind Wesley's apartments on campus. There are food plots. And so we have a few students who are public theology majors that are doing food justice. So they are growing food behind Wesley and kind of using it as a way to show food justice and how to do those things. And it's kind of that pod. So we try to do a overall thing of understanding it's bigger than just politics and policies, but how do you not just know about it, but do you live it? And so one thing this year we have done is that we changed what we call National Capital Semester for Seminarians from NCSS to National Capital Experiences, because what we decided to do was that we were going to keep the spring class virtual because it allowed for people to come from all over the country because it's virtual. And so that class is actually called Faith, Politics, and the Public Square. And it's an amazing class. It's what I took. It is the signature class of the Center for Public Theology. And what we do in that class is that we spend time with various topics. And some of the ones we're going to talk about this semester coming up in spring, and it's every spring. And we talk about war and peace and race, gender, global climate. And then we have guests from those guests from those topics. And so when we talk about, we had Sister Simone Campbell come, and we were talking about, United States relationship to the world, how the world views us. And so we had Ambassador John Kerry come on talk. And then we said, well, some of our students were saying, well, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm here because I feel called to ministry, but I don't know that I feel called to the church. I might want to do something different. And so we had the founder of Shake Shack come and speak to the students, because guess what had happened? He was a person of faith, and he saw a nonprofit park in New York that was trying to raise money and kind of fell through the cracks and didn't qualify for anything. And then he also noticed that he was hungry when he was at the park, right? And so he said, And so he put a shack up that sold hot dogs and hamburgers to raise money for the park. And so for those of you who are big Shake Shack fans, that is how Shake Shack created. A person of faith decided, the owner said, this park needs money, and he saw that as a ministry. And in fact, he actually created a special IPO so that when Shake Shack went public, all of the money from when they went public actually went to nonprofits, including like Feeding America. They all got millions of dollars from the Shake Shack IPO. And so we talk about these things in these classes because it helps our students see bigger than just the pulpit, than just the four walls. And so they meet with advocates. We went with Bread for the World. One of the ways that I know Dr. Dent is because our class went to visit when she was at the museum and in the Freedom Center. And so we learned all these spaces that are bigger than just the church. And so one of the things we're super excited about is that the seminary class, Faith, Politics, and the Public Square, has traditionally been when we talk about a lot of these objects and we help students see bigger. But in May of 2022, for 1 week, 5 days, we are introducing advocacy and action in the public square. And then we're going to actually help people learn, much like you did sort of today in this shortened version with the BJC just earlier, and you'll probably hear from them all during that week as well, where people will come into DC, and each day we'll take a different topic, and we're going to learn how to do advocacy from people who are doing the work, so that people who have taken this class can go back and take that home. And that's learning how to do, I think it was Charles or one of them said, how from the rooter, and there's my grandparents used to say, from the rooter to the tutor. So from the front to the back, how do you start? How do you navigate doing the work, not just knowing about it, not just talking about it, because a lot of times in classes, we kind of discuss it, but that advocacy and action class is going to help you learn how to do the work. And so we're so excited because that is brand new for Wesley to have something like that. And that is something that Dr. Dent knows I have been pushing to have something that we don't just talk about it like we do in Faith, Politics, and Public Square, which is great. And that class is actually open to any seminarian from any ATS accredited school across the country. And by being virtual last year, we were so excited because we had students from all different faiths. We had students from different sides of the aisle. We had students from different areas of the country. We had new schools sign up. We had 2 new Catholic universities sign up to join us, which gave the whole ideal of great different discussions and things. So you didn't have the same classroom with just same people in there. And I will say this about some of our guests. We have guests who we love, and we have guests who may make us cringe, but we need to hear all the sides so that we know how to do the work, right? So while we had, John Kerry, and we had, we had Robert Jones from PRRI, and then we had Bishop Leah Daughtry. We had John Kerry, and we had Senator Chris Coons. But we also had the guy who ran President Trump's campaign. And it was a painful class because they really believe what they said they do, but it was a class that was necessary to have if we're really going to really dialogue and understand what we need in the issues and policies in the public square. And so we make sure we try to be equal in all we do, even in the webinars and things we offer. We try to have both sides. Well, whether they're always invited, whether they come is another story, but the center does seek to say, how do we engage as people of faith or non-faith? Because we have people who are non-faith who are there, but want to learn a little bit more. How do you engage? How do you see? How do you then go out there? And it's not just behind the church walls, but it's really, really outside of it. How do we look and say, oh my God, one of the things we've been talking about with our students is we have some students in we have the center, I had it earlier. Community Engagement Institute is also the other side to the center. And so the students in Public Theology and Engagement Institute, they create projects. And so like one of those projects is working with people who are incarcerated when they get out. And so one of the things she's working on are policies and finding out, why are there all these policies for people who are coming out of prison who can't get jobs that while they were in prison, they were forced to do? So if you can be a firefighter when you're in prison in California, why do you not qualify to be a firefighter once you get out? And so these are the things she's understanding and learning. And then now she's working on how do we fight or create policies to allow those things. And so that's really what the center design is out there to do. The center is saying, how do we help people say, okay, I want to do these things. I want to be there. I want to do more than just sit in a pew. I see it on TV, I see these trials, I see these things. How do I do things better? And so we don't just want to equip you with the Bible, but we also equip you with, I used to say in a newspaper, but now with an iPad. And I tell people all the time, one of the things I loved was that Mike brings in people of different things to teach us. But even at the school, they brought in different people. So we have to take preaching class. But our first preaching class, our foundations preaching class, the first class, for those of you from DC, you'll know who this person is. They brought in Arch Campbell, who was like the entertainment and I think it was entertainment or something for NBC News here. And he taught us about how to talk to people, how to speak and how to do speaking. And so for so many people, that seems so unusual. But for Wesley, that seemed very usual because it showed that it was bigger than just church, but how do you reach the world? How do you reach people anywhere they are, and not just preaching at them, but living and learning and knowing them? And so that's the Center for Public Theology and what we do and what we seek to do. And I hope if you want to get in touch with you can let me know and learn what we're doing. We have some great webinars. I know what they're going to be talking about mass incarceration. We have some movie watchings coming up with various social topics and some trainings. And then most importantly, we have the NCES class coming up, as well as the advocacy class coming up in May. And so I am excited to be a partner here. As Dr. Dent mentioned, I took the class when I was a student at Wesley. And then when I graduated, I a few months later joined the staff. And I think that speaks to how the program is, because I went from crying, I literally was crying at the orientation going because I didn't want to be there. And I felt like God was punishing me, to seeing how my way can be, to how I could serve God in a way that I absolutely loved and that God created me, which was serving the community and fighting for policy, fighting for change in a way that seemed an antithesis to what it meant to be a minister, but understanding that this is indeed ministry and making sure that our people are safe, making sure, one of our other classes we offer at Wesley through the center and through the Community Engagement Institute is with the Children's Defense Fund. And we literally take people down to the farm to learn how to advocate for children. And so those are the things that are important to us, because we realize that really that theology is bigger than just the pulpit. And so that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. But thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, Dr. Dent.
Thank you, Reverend Andrews. I am so grateful to you for the work that you're doing. at the Center for Public Theology. Like you mentioned, we've collaborated in various ways, and I celebrate the many ways in which you help people to reimagine what ministry looks like. That involves advocacy, that involves actually doing the work on many levels, right? And then making that marriage between the community and the academy. And also houses of worship or communities of faith. So I really appreciate all that you shared today. I put the link in the chat for people to learn more about the Center for Public Theology. And I put your personal email, your work email address in there, as you saw, but I also put the email address for the center in there because people might have some personal questions that they want to ask and learn more about your work. But thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm also posting this on social media so people are aware that there are opportunities to engage. This has been an incredible time of learning with all of you, and I'm so grateful that you registered to join the Reimagining Religious Freedom Mobile Institute, partnered with Vanderbilt Divinity School's Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative. If we've learned nothing else in the last 3 days, we've learned that there's so much more work that needs to happen, and that faith leaders, people of faith, non-religious people, free thinkers, we all have a responsibility to take action on these issues and do something about it. It's not enough for you to attend this conference and take the information and then just go back into your contacts and say nothing or not share it. It's important that we take action and do the work to reimagine religious freedom, which allows us to reimagine how everyone can live and thrive in society. That is without discrimination, and that's without religion being used to discriminate. So as you've heard before, when you see something, say something, but you also have to do something. And so everyone will determine in your quiet time what your role is in doing this work. But just know that now that you know this information, you have a responsibility to care for humanity and take action and use your moral conscience to guide you in doing this work. So I'm so grateful to all of you that have joined us. Again, I want to thank our partners at Vanderbilt Divinity School, the BJC, which is the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty, the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Theological Seminary, our friends at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, our friends at KARAMAH, Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights, and as well as our friends that have joined us, even Union Presbyterian Seminary, who supported us in the work that we were doing. There's so many people that I can thank, and I might forget names, but I just want you to remember that there's work for us to do. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. Go online to get your representative's contact information. Use the phone number that Jaziah and Charles provided. Check out the BJC. Check out Wesley Theological Seminary. And with that, I say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. And we'll close out by sharing the slide again, thanking our sponsors as well as the Henry Luce Foundation. And I cannot say thank you enough to Dr. Teresa Smallwood, who is a visionary, who continues to do this work in many ways that brings all of our communities together to fight for the causes that we love and that allow us to thrive as human beings. So thank you, Dr. Teresa, and I wish all of you a wonderful day.